Magic with Outdoor Cooking Magic Challenge number 6. This is from a family recipe cookbook, and it is quick cinnamon breakfast cake. And you know, baking anything, cakes or pies, as we already did the Dutch oven, strawberry rhubarb pie, any kind of baking goes great in a Dutch oven. So that's how we're going to cook this breakfast cake tonight. I know it's been a long time since I chose this recipe, and I went on vacation and a lot of other things got in the way. While I was on vacation, there's actually a wildfire near our home, and here I'm going to show you how close that came. There's a great shot of it. You can see right up there where the fire was, all up in there. And we were lucky, you know, nothing came down. Actually, no homes in town got burned, but it was pretty darn close. So all that's been distracting me, and finally I'm getting back to doing this 6th Outdoor Cooking Magic Challenge. Okay, to make this breakfast cake, I'm going to take a cup of milk, 6 tablespoons of butter, and an egg, and I'm going to mix that together first. Okay, now that I got that mixed, I'm going to add a couple cups of flour. Going to add a half cup of sugar, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and a half teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to mix that together. You just want to mix this until all the dry ingredients have been moistened, so don't overmix it. Just about there. Okay, all done. Now while I wait for the coals to get hot, we're going to mix up the topping. This has a topping with it. I'm just going to use this bowl. I had the flour in it. And I'm going to put in 4 tablespoons of butter, melted butter. Now the original recipe called for regular sugar. I'm going to use brown sugar. The reason I'm going to do that is because I love that topping you put on apple crisp. And that's usually what I use is anyways brown sugar, cinnamon, some butter, and some oatmeal. So a half teaspoon of, no, this is a whole teaspoon of cinnamon. And then it's supposed to be 3/4 cup of oatmeal. I've only got a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to have to go get another half cup. This one's 3/4 cup. Put another half. And mix that up. And this will go on top of the breakfast cake before we start cooking it. Mix that cinnamon in good, and mix all that oatmeal in with. Like I said, this is similar to a topping I like on top of apple crisp. And if you haven't had apple crisp in a Dutch oven, it is wonderful. There we go. That's our topping that we're going to put on top of this. Coals are just about ready, I think. So let's get it in the Dutch oven. Because we're going to cook this directly in the bottom of the Dutch oven, it should probably work, but I'm going to put just a little coat of oil just to make sure. That should help it keep from sticking to the bottom. Dutch ovens are naturally non-stick, but I'm just going to go with a little extra. And we're going to bake this at 425 degrees. In order to do that, you need about 30 coals. When you're baking, you put a 1/3 of those on the bottom and 2/3 on top. So we're going to put 10 underneath. I just put them in a circle. And I'm going to let this heat up for just a bit before I put the batter in. So we'll put the 20 on the top. These have to be really close together. 19, and let's pick a good one here. 20. Alright, we're going to let this heat up for just a little bit, then we'll get the batter in. Alright, I think it's probably hot enough. See if we can get this lid off. Looks like I had a problem with my video recorder, my camcorder, and didn't get all of this filmed, but after I removed the lid, I poured the batter in to the bottom of the Dutch oven, and then took the topping that I made, the oatmeal, brown sugar, cinnamon topping, and I sprinkled it on top of the batter inside the Dutch oven, and then I replaced the lid and started it cooking. Okay, it is time to rotate. I'm going to rotate the pot, Dutch oven, 90 degrees. And then when you do that, you always want to take the top and rotate it the opposite direction, 90 degrees. So that you get kind of an even distribution of these coals so you don't develop a hot spot in any one location. A few more minutes and then we'll check it. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. I'm sorry, 15 minutes. Let's check this. Looks delicious. Put a toothpick in, completely clean. I think this is done. The only thing I notice is not real brown on top. I've got a couple ideas about that, so we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Let's see how it tastes. Well, first of all, here's the dish. Here's the breakfast cake as after I got it out of the Dutch oven. You can see that it came away pretty cleanly there. I think that oil helped. And interestingly enough, a lot of the filling, the topping, kind of sunk down in. So that's really nice. So my wife is not here today. She's out of town, so I'm going to try this by myself. You're going to have to trust me. Okay, here goes. Nice flavor. You know, I think that 15 minutes was probably just a little long. It tastes just a little bit dried out. So, cooking in a Dutch oven is not an exact science. Obviously, it's a lot different than in terms of keep the temperature control than your oven. Affected by a lot of factors, and it's a pretty warm night out tonight. So I figured that the coals were okay how I had them. Maybe I could have gotten by with a couple less, and maybe I should have checked it just a little bit earlier and seen if it was done, and then stopped it cooking at that point. It tastes great, just a hair dry. Could be a little bit more moist. My coals weren't quite done, and that's also maybe the batter started to rise as it does if you don't get it in, and that might have led to it also. So the other thing about the crust not being brown, I was thinking about that. You know, I only have 12-inch Dutch ovens. I really need to get a 10-inch Dutch oven. And the batter that I had just barely covered the bottom, as you saw. With a 10-inch Dutch oven, it would have been a little bit higher and closer to the top, and I think would have browned a little bit better. And so that's one thing that you could do. And the other thing you could do if all you had was a 12-inch Dutch oven would be to double the recipe, so you have more batter. You might have to cook it a little longer. Just monitor that, check it with a toothpick. And then finally, sometimes I'll cook things like this in a cake pan or a pie pan set in the Dutch oven, set up on top of some rocks, or sometimes I'll use canning jar lids, not lids, the rings, and put them in the bottom of the Dutch oven just to keep it up above, just so it doesn't burn. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do that because this didn't burn at all the way we did it. So that's another thing, that it would keep the batter a little smaller circumference, which would keep it maybe closer to the top, and also keeping it up off the bottom would rise it to the top a little bit. And that might have allowed the top of the breakfast cake to get a little bit more of the heat from the Dutch oven to brown it a little bit more. Other than that, it tastes great. And I think you will really enjoy it. It would be great for a camp out, maybe even a dessert for a meal that you're cooking outdoors. So I hope you'll try this recipe. It's on my website at the link below, and that you'll check out the other articles and posts and reviews I've got on my website. And subscribe to my newsletter if you haven't done that yet, so that you can get emailed to you tips and recipes and other ideas that I have about outdoor cooking. And the link is on the website, on the video right now. So I'm glad that you stayed with me for this video. And Scott from OutdoorCookingMagic.com. Remember, it always tastes better when it's cooked outdoors.